if you are going to expose kids to ideas that are propaganda, I think to me, it feels very important that you are also encouraging the critical thought that led you to believe these ideas.
Totally.
Exposing your kids to multiple kinds of ideas through the lens of questioning. Like, this is what I think is true, and this is what our family thinks is true. But also, these are why some people say it's not true. And like, let's debate about it. Let's talk about it. And I think a lot of people, again, I'm going to generalize in a way that probably isn't fair, but I do think a lot of people on the more conservative side of things seem to, there's a sort of sanctity towards the strength and individuality of an individual that I think makes one feel a little more allergic to propagandizing. There's this sort of like, I thought my way to get here.
Yeah.
And I want you to think your way here too, because I respect your ability to do so, as opposed to a more emotional, empathetic, like, let me help you get here kind of come from. But I think I wish I had a better answer, because it's a very stark divide in my mind between two very different ways of thinking about not just ideas and culture and politics and propaganda, but also about interacting with kids.
Yeah.
But I think the more you respect the individuality of a kid, I think the more instinctive it becomes to not want to shove your ideas down their throat, because you want them to have the space to come to their own conclusions. But there's also sort of a dark underbelly of that where, like, you don't want your kids to hate you either for forcing ideas on them. And then later they grow up and they go, well, all my friends don't think this, so
Sure.
why did you do that to me, Mom?
Well, I think, Hannah, I think you're right to pair it with critical thinking. Otherwise, it is what we would typically classify as just strictly indoctrination or propaganda, right? I think most good parents are trying to say, like, I don't want my kid to just be a mini-me and a robot that regurgitates what they're told. I want my kid to, which is, I think, why a lot of people love our products, because they stimulate a lot of that thinking and discussion to kind of unpack that. But my mind goes to the Vadi Bakum quote, where he says that don't be surprised if you send your children to Caesar's schools and they return home as Romans, right? So this gets to the question of intentionality of, like, how are you helping your kids? Like, what cultural values are you imparting? What sources are they relying upon as a source of truth? What's the process of engagement and discussion to help them navigate that? What foundation of true principles and doctrine are you giving them? And I think that applies to a political context and an economic and a cultural and social context as well, not just the religious one that Vadi Bakum was talking about. But to me, like, and let me sum up this way. One of the very interesting things that I observed years into doing Tuttle Twins was that parents needed and wanted help. And they didn't know how to do what they wanted to do. They knew that they wanted their kids to understand these ideas and to love freedom and America and to be critical thinkers. And, like, they have these aspirations, but they had their kids enrolled in a school or even using homeschool curricula that just was not rising to the occasion. That was not accomplishing the mission. And more often than not, these parents themselves were products of what I call the public school system. They themselves, graduated long ago with a very, I'll say, deficient curriculum. And so, and it's mostly the moms who are doing the homeschooling and the education stuff, right? So most of these moms have a deep insecurity when it comes to their own knowledge of these ideas and thus their ability to transmit the ideas and to respond to questions from their children, about those ideas. Today I say, well, just go ask Grok or ChatGPT and you'll have a little study buddy to help you out. But these parents were really struggling because they had high hopes and aspirations, low expectations and engagement, and they weren't really sure how to bridge the divide. And so fundamentally what our resources try and do is just to be that crutch, just to say, like, you want to be a good mom, you want to be a good dad, you have these aspirations. Let us just give you some tools to engage in these ideas, to discuss them, to apply them in your, day-to-day lives of your family. Because I don't want this to just be an intellectual exercise. I don't want this to be a strict indoctrination of facts that the child can just regurgitate and, robotically repeat. No, I want these ideas to be tested and evaluated and discussed and debated. And how do we do that in a home environment where parents and children are talking about and engaged in the same issues and the same ideas? That's why our work is so optimized for the family dinner table, because I think that, again, is where you see the retention. It's where you see the application. It's where you see the change. So I like what you're saying. I do think the critical thinking aspect has to be there. Otherwise, we're just turning our kids into robots and lemmings, and that's not ultimately what we want, right?
No, if you teach your child to merely absorb the ideas that are being presented to them by an authority figure that they respect, when you cease to be the primary authority figure in their life, they will be susceptible to the ideas of any authority figure who they
Amen.
hold in high regard. And so you have to teach them the art of thinking and the practice and the willingness to ask questions, and encourage them to ask you questions and make them feel like their questions are respected, even if they're, 5-year-old level questions. You're still making them feel like it is always okay, that their questions will be met well, and that those questions are an avenue for deeper understanding and greater knowledge. And I think that's deeply important no matter what ideas you're exposing your kid to. And I think it also alleviates some of the instinctive repulsion towards just propagandizing to your kids to inoculate them against other ideas that I think a lot of people rightfully feel, because they want to respect the integrity and the development of their child. Like, I don't want to meddle too much. I don't want to try to force you to be something. I respect the miracle
Right.
that is you and all of your unique and beautiful, like, all the things that make you what you are, and you're different from me and you're different from anyone else, and that's amazing. And I think parents really want to treat that as sacred. Um but if you're giving your kid the tools to cultivate their own thought process, you can kind of expose them to anything, because you're teaching them how to discuss it and how to grapple with it and how to tie it to other ideas that they're also being exposed to, which kids are also capable of way earlier than people think they are. Really talk to a 3-year-old for a while and watch the way they're piecing together information. Like, their cognitive skills are way farther along than culture gives them credit for. But I do think that softens some of the instinctive aversion that people feel towards just propagandizing toward their kids. Like, I think they're right in being concerned about just outright propaganda, but I also don't think that's what you're talking about. You're talking about exposure to ideas that they otherwise would not ever see, and therefore, your kid is not going to magically intuit about the world all of these different philosophical concepts and deep workings and things that it has taken incredibly smart people generations of work to figure out. They're not going to just intuit that. They have to be exposed to it for it to become part of their lexicon, but that's not the same as replacing their cognition with just here's the finished thought, just take this and you don't have to think about it anymore.
Yep, that's right.